All right, let's talk about the first assignment. This first assignment looks for you to get familiar with some of the basic technologies, front end, or building a front end user interfaces. I'll introduce you to HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a very popular CSS library that allows you to very easily lay out your application to be readily responsive, right? So that if folks resize their windows, your application, adapts to the size of that window, right? So, and there's no point in reinventing that, and there's tons of libraries out there, which Bootstrap is one of the popular ones. So this is the first of several assignments that are going to be building on each other. For this first assignment, you're going to be asked to build a couple of things. A homepage, like a landing page that's going to show a list of courses. Again, to remind you, right, we're building a somewhat of a replacement to Blackboard, right? We'll be calling it throughout the semester. We'll call it Whiteboard, right? So there will be a page where you have a list of all the courses, and where folks can register and create an account. Obviously, folks can't actually create an account because we don't have JavaScript, we don't have a server, we don't have a database, so we can't actually create an account. Right now, we're just going to focus on how to create a form, right? And it happens to be a registration form. It happens to be a login form. Yes, right. But so that's the focus of learning how to build these things. And the form is also responsive, meaning if it has a if it's wide, then it renders horizontally. But if it's small, then it renders vertically, right? So that's the focus of the assignment. How do I make it so that it's responsive? Right? Also, some best practices of using of things should be aligned, right? That things should take up as much space as possible, so that on a phone I'm not pecking at it, right? That it's wide, it takes the entire width of the page, things like that, right? Best practices like that. So the landing page, a registration form, a login. We're almost going to give you most of that source code in class. That's why it has low points. As we progress and creating a profile that allows logged in users to edit their profile, obviously they can't edit a profile. Again, it's just learning how to build forms and also strongly typing all your input fields, right? That if you're asking for a date, then make sure that you're using a date picker. That if you're asking for an email, that you're validating for an email and things like that. If you're asking for numbers and things like that, we're to use the right input fields. And also, there's a course editor. We're also going to start you off. We're going to start you off with a course editor where faculty can edit their courses, right? That they can add modules, they can add topics, sections, and then we're going to add a whole bunch of widgets that allow you to add movies, video, HTML content, images, links to documents, things like that. You're going to be able to drag and drop these widgets onto a course editor. So again, the focus here is building a UI for the faculty, right? So the first half of the course, up until the midterm, a little after the midterm, will be building the application for the faculty. The second half will be addressing the user, the student. So the learning objectives is to learn, get familiar with HTML, CSS libraries, also a little bit of UML if you haven't seen UML. If you have, then great. Here's the design. The design is you have these entities of various of the type of information that the application is going to manage. We have a base person that captures everything that is common to all types of users, such as faculty and students. Faculty is going to be able to manage any number of courses. So there's a one-to-many between faculty and courses. A course can have many sections for that one course, and students can be enrolled in a section. A course is made up of multiple modules. Very much like in the Blackboard, right? There's the whole modules on the left-hand side, and then on the right-hand side you have all sorts of content. Each module can have many lessons. Each lesson can have many topics. Each topic can have any number of widgets. You can drag and drop widgets on the screen. There are different types of widgets. There's a heading widgets, paragraph, video, YouTube videos, HTML, images. they don't fit here. So I've only put just a few here. Some really trivial widgets. These are really, really simple widgets, but we'll address more sophisticated, more advanced widgets as we progress. This UML is going to change a little bit later on when we are on the when we're building the student side. We're going to add here a quiz widget that is going to have quizzes will have questions. Questions are going to have answers to those questions, and students are going to be able to answer those questions. Right, so we're going to keep track of all those answers to those quizzes, so that can be evaluated dynamically. But we'll introduce that a little later in the as we progress through the course. Here's some wireframes of what the user interface might look like. You don't have to make the user interface look exactly as this is, but the features should be there, right? Should be the same. Okay. For instance, we are suggesting here that when it's wide, it should render horizontally, right? The labels on the left and the input fields on the right. We are requiring that that the button is as big as possible, so it's easy to click on, not a tiny little button. That these are taking up as much space as is allowed. That everything is nicely aligned. That there's the same white spaces is consistent through that. So those kinds of things, we are looking for that. But if you prefer a different theme, a different color scheme, or you don't like the rounded corners, or, you can change all those kinds of things, right? The type of labels. Also here we have some tooltips, and we have some hints on what is that we're expecting you to type there. So certainly that's also required. But when you don't have enough space, it renders vertically, right? The labels changed to display above the input field. Again, same thing. We have a consistent white space use, and it automatically responds as you resize the page. We also have some best practices that we're requiring from you. So for instance, we're going to have a naming convention of what the files should be called, right? How do you organize all these files? When it's just a couple of files, it might a convention might be an overkill. But as the number of files grows, right, the complexity of the application, you certainly want to have some kind of mechanism to manage the ever-growing complexity. So we're suggesting that your HTML documents should have the following naming convention. First, the feature, right? So in this case, it'll be the login. Then the type of document that you're looking at, and the role that file is playing in your application. In this case, the HTML file is playing the role of being a template, right, for rendering things on the front end. Also, where is this executing, right? Whether is this executing on the server, is executing on the client? Where is this executing? So there's a client, and then the type of document it is, HTML, CSS, Java, JavaScript. What is it? If you've taken if you already have some experience working in teams and you prefer a different naming convention, feel free to suggest that you prefer using some other naming convention. If you haven't, use mine. Okay, use my naming convention. Every team has their own, right? If you've been in industry, you notice that, right, that the team comes up with a set of nomenclatures and conventions where all team members should agree on. Here's an initial example of what the login page might look like. This is only for demonstration purposes. It's not the you should make sure that this actually works, right? Any source code that we give you, make sure that it actually works. Just to point out a couple of things here, a couple of conventions is that, for instance, notice that this input field here has several attributes. It has a class attribute, the ID attribute, the placeholder. It might take an entire very long line of code, and it would be very inconvenient for me to have to scroll to the right-hand side to read your source code. So be respectful for whoever is reading your source code, and make it easier for them. So put everything in its own line, Right? Consider as each one being a statement. Okay. So again, typically the source code that you write, it's not, it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the team. Right? You're usually writing for someone else. Somebody else is reviewing your source code, and the easier you can make it for the team, the better. Yes. Yes. Anything I give you as a best practice, we'll be looking for those kinds of things. Yep. If you're familiar with lint, perhaps you might want to use lint to check on your styling, right? And just encode that and have your IDE just check for that. All right. Maybe I can share a lint with you. Let's see what else. Also, a couple of things here. Every input field should have a placeholder. Every input field should have an ID. Also, if you're using a class that is your own, that you're coming up with some kind of styling, then it should be prepended, right? That has some moniker or that identifies that it's yours, right? That it's not bootstraps, or it's not mine that I gave you. Maybe it's one of yours. So that's a best practice. In for instance, all the classes that I'm going to give you in this class, they're all going to start with webdev, right? So it's clear that this is something that was given to you in the class. If you're using your own, make sure that you put maybe your initials or something, right? Your initials dash and then a class, right? Unfortunately, Bootstrap is not following that best practice. This is a class from Bootstrap. Maybe because Bootstrap, the abbreviation is BS. Maybe they didn't use that. I don't know. But they certainly should have prepended with something. Classes. Also, we're going to try and automate a lot of the grading, right? So to automate it, we're going to ask you to apply certain classes on each one of these fields. Okay, the input field, the username input field, the password input field, the button, these labels. Right, we're going to create it. We're going to create automated scripts that are going to open up they're going to open up they're going to visit your server, right? And they're going to check to see, is the input fields, are they there? If I click on the button, does it actually navigate, right? So we're going to automate that. And for that to work, we're asking you that the username field, you apply the following classes, right? So webdev field, webdev username. For the password field, webdev password. For the login, whether you choose it to be a button or a link, to add webdev button, webdev login, and so on and so forth. Yes? Right. So every page, every input field will have a specific set of classes that will allow us to automate the test. Right? Okay. So the TAs are hard at work creating these automated scripts to run the tests and automate the grading. Also, we want you to follow best practices of source control, right? So we're asking you to be as verbose as possible as you work through your assignment, right? We ask you to create a Git repository, add every every new file that you create, any new milestone that you reach, okay, that you add the file, you commit it, and add a very simple comment, right? And so at the end, for maybe the login page, you might have 2 or 3 commits that might say, well, here's where I started, and here's where I styled it, and here's where I laid it out or whatnot for that particular file. For the user signup requirements, again, the signup looks almost the same, identical to the login. Again, it's responsive. The only additional field here is a verified password. Also, if you've noticed, there's some links at the bottom that allow you to navigate between the sign up screen and the login screen. Those links should work, right? Should allow you to navigate between the two. And here are also classes that we require you to add to the different fields, right? Add these classes. And here's another reminder to commit your work into source control. All right, we're going to stop reminding you. after the first or second assignment, I forget. After that, we're just going to expect that you have, a history of various commits for every single file. Okay. And then there's a profile, profile screen. Again, it's almost identical in implementation with the other screens. The only difference, perhaps, is that the username, you can't edit your username once you've chosen that username. The email should be an email data type. The faculty should be a drop-down. The date should be a date picker. And also it's also responsive. Okay, so this is just reminding you to use a date picker, a drop-down. The email should also be an email, right? So of type email. We'll do that in class. Let's see. Also, we have classes for each one, right? For each different field. Oh, there's a oh, this doesn't show it, but there's an alert here. See that alert? That alert eventually that's going to be driven by JavaScript, right? To show it or hide it depending on some logic. But for now, just display it all the time, right? Always display that alert. We'll make it dynamic later when we do jQuery and JavaScript and whatnot. For now, it'll be statically there. When you click on the sign up, when you click on sign up, or when you click on login, those two should navigate to your profile, right? Navigate to the profile, presumably because you successfully logged in or you successfully registered, right? You're navigated to your personal profile. Yes. Obviously, later on we'll add logic behind that to verify that that username is not already taken, that password actually matches. All that we'll add later. For now, we'll blindly navigate to the profile. This is very typical when you're creating prototypes, right? You're going through a requirements gathering phase, and folks will, developers will create some kind of requirements. It will create a prototype that they put in front of the stakeholders, and for folks to actually see it working, right, and gather some more feedback from the client. So that's what we're building. We're building a prototype, right? A static set of screens that kind of allows us to play around with it. Almost all of this we'll do in class. The home screen, the home page. So this is what I'm suggesting, that the home page, the first thing that you see is a list of courses. If you notice, the list of courses looks suspiciously similar to Google Docs, or Google Sheets. I forget, or maybe what is it? Their Drive, yeah, Google Drive. And again, the look and feel, you're free to fix make it look whatever you want. Okay, so it obviously doesn't have to look like this. There have to be rows, right? We're asking for rows. There have to be columns. There has to be some kind of icon here, some kind of title, an owned by column, a date or time, an X button that allows you to remove that course. There also has to be this first top here. This first header over here needs to be stuck to the top. So as you scroll, right, the header is stuck to the top, right? So this everything scrolls under the header. The actual notice that there's some sorting icons here. Obviously, we can't sort. We don't have JavaScript yet, but the icon should be there, right, ready for the next assignment, so that we can add some behavior around that. There's two versions of this course manager. There's this row kind of or list view, list version. But notice there's a toggle here that if you click on that toggle, it shows an alternate representation of the same data. Right? There's a grid view that if you click on that icon, it navigates to a grid representation, which I don't have. Okay, I'll make it available there. The grid view basically displays the same content, but with various grids on the screen. Maybe I moved that to the second assignment. Maybe that's what I did. Yeah, probably that's what I did. All right. What else? Obviously, clicking on the X doesn't actually remove the course. Eventually, it will. We'll work on that. When you click on the title, it navigates to that course, so you can edit the course. right? It will navigate to a course editor. So the course editor looks as follows. Oh, so here's the list of classes that are required. The hamburger is this these 3 or 4 lines that are shown here on the left-hand side. That folks sometimes refer to as the hamburger. The course manager label, the new course title field. All these are, the label, the field, this button. They're all listed here, and asking you to please use these classes. All right. What we'll do is that we'll share the script with you, and you can run them locally on your machine, so you could test whether your UI passes the test, right? So you can do some of that end-to-end testing. Right. So when you click on the course editor, when you click on the course editor, when you click on the course title, it navigates to the course editor, right? So the course editor looks as follows. It looks almost what the end user might see, but it has all sorts of editing buttons and whatnot, right? So, for instance, the as a faculty, I can create modules, right, by clicking on this plus sign over here, right, and then adds modules. I can delete a module by clicking on X. Eventually, we're going to be able to move modules and drag them and put them in different places. As I click on a particular module, it shows me at the top. It shows me different in tabs. It shows me different sections, right? Different sections or lessons. I forget what I call them. I think I call them lessons. And so these are all the lessons in that module. If I click on a different module, I get different lessons. Yes. Right. If I click on a particular lesson, then I see different topics rendered as pills, right? And if I click on a particular topic, right, I see different content, different widgets that have been dragged onto the page. Yes, right. And these widgets, there's all sorts of types of widgets. Some YouTube videos that I can drag on there, for the lecture. Maybe some PDFs, some Word documents I can drag in here. I can drag all sorts of content. So as a faculty, I can add more lessons. I can add more topics. I can delete a topic. I can move a topic around, right? As a faculty, as a student, I'm only going to be able to consume this. I'll only have a read-only version of this. Yes, and also as a faculty, I have a preview button that allows me to see what would the students see, right? What would they see? But as a faculty, I have all sorts of forms that allow me to edit each widget, and each widget can be edited differently. Each widget has its own little way of editing it. For instance, here's a really trivial widget, which is just a heading, right? It's just a header, and you can change the size of the header, you can change the actual text of the header, and you can give it a name, right? A unique name. Well, it doesn't have to be unique. And then down below, it shows you a preview of what that header might look like. Okay. Also, I can delete the widget. I can move the widget up and down, right, to change the content. I can change the type of the widget. I can click on the widget. And this will re-render on the fly, and show me a different version of that widget. I have a plus sign to add more widgets, and I can rearrange them. Let's see what else. There's a save button there. Not quite sure if we'll need it, depending on later on in different later assignments, you will be given a choice of how to implement that save button, whether you want to save periodically, behind the scenes, and you don't really need a save button, or that each widget just saves themselves, so there's no need for a save button, or if you choose to do like a cache everything on the client and then click a save to save everything, a bulk save. Yes, you're kind of free to choose which way to go. So that save button might be irrelevant or not, depending which strategy you choose. Okay, so we'll come back to that a little later. The faculty will be able to click on the preview toggle here, and if they click on the preview, all the forms go away, right? Only the preview stay. Right, so all the forms go away. I can't edit. I can see only the preview without the actual preview title. Right, I can see what the end user might see. So we call this this piece of content here, this component here, is the list of widgets. Right, here's a widget, then another widget, then another widget, then another widget. Right, the list of widget, right, or the widget list, I think we call it. And that widget list, here's an example. Here's a heading widget. There is a list widget. The list widget has its own form that allows you to type in all the content, whether you want an unordered list or you want a ordered list, and then it renders it as either an unordered list or an ordered list. Here's a couple of requirements which might not be important now. It'll be important a little later. That if you click on the delete button, you need to be it will delete the button. Again, we can't do that until if we have JavaScript. Yes, we can't actually delete anything just yet. This first assignment just asks you to create static versions of this. Right, create static versions of this, which will make dynamic later when we do React. We do Redux, we'll come back and make this all dynamic. Right, when you notice that when you click on the preview button, it just shows you, right, the actual content that the user might see with no forms, right? No delete button, no nothing, right? No reordering, only what the end student might see. Yeah, right. Then it goes into each type of widget. The heading widget has a drop down to choose the size of the widget. The paragraph widget is pretty simple. Allows you to just type just text, right, and it'll wrap it inside of a paragraph. That's a really simple widget. The list widget allows you to just in a text area just type different items, right, per line, and then it renders them either as an ordered list or an unordered list, right, and it just previews it down below. The image widget allows you to type in a URL of an image, right, and then embeds it into the preview. And finally, the link widget allows you to create a link, the text of the link, and then renders it down below that if you click on it, it navigates to that page. Source control, make sure that you commit, that you add comments every time you make a change, and the deliverables, right, that this needs to be running on Heroku or AWS. If you have an account on AWS, if you prefer to use AWS, that's fine. We can work with that. Although Heroku, I've found it to be easier for folks. We are asking you to deploy it in a repository. We're giving you here an example name to use for your repository. A good name for this fall semester, I would use maybe webdev fall 19, and maybe my username, right? And the first example that we've been working will be just a Java web server. Server dash Java. So that would be a good name, right? For me, my username is Janunzi. You would use your username. Notice that this says that it's a server and it's a Java server. Later on, we'll have a Node.js server as well, so we're gonna be able to distinguish what type of server it is. Same thing for the client. There'll be a client which is a React client. There'll be a client which is a Angular client, and there'll be a client that is a Vue client. Okay. So we have some references here. Also, make sure that for the quizzes, make sure that you understand what HTML is, CSS, Bootstrap, Spring Boot. Make sure you know your acronyms. Right, we're going to throw at you lots and lots of acronyms. Make sure that you know what they are. All right.